In a lot of places, we're not the only place. There's 20 other places where everybody's sitting on a couch trying to figure out next year, trying to hire coaches and coordinators and all the rest of that nonsense. Chicago, Illinois is one of those places, and that is where I met this guy nearly 2 decades ago at the turn of the century. We did a little sports radio together at Sporting News. He's now doing the Bleacher Report thing, and you can follow his journey out on Twitter, and tens of thousands do at Dan Pompei on Twitter, as well as at danpompei.net. We welcome one of our defending champions back from the Windy City. We got it bad here, but not as bad as you got it there, right?
It could always be worse. The Ravens could be the Bears, right?
You could be the Browns. I mean, we see them twice a year.
Could be the Browns. Could be worse still, yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the time of the year where the comeuppance is there, right? The Black Mondays and the coaches and all of that hope in Jacksonville for Gus Bradley, and you've written about it, and I've talked about it. It's kind of all gone at this point. Same thing with Rex Ryan in Buffalo and whatever the hell they got cooking out in San Francisco these days, right?
Yeah, obviously this time of year. It's interesting because if you had asked people about a month or two ago, I think a lot of people were saying, well, there's only going to be a couple changes this year. It's going to be really a slow year for front office and head coaching changes. And, of course, you get down to this time, and it seems like everything's up for grabs. I mean, I don't know that we're done with all the firings. There could be more. We've had a number, some unexpected. Obviously, the Gary Kubiak retirement has been something that kind of caught a lot of people by surprise, and sometimes there's more surprises as we move along.
Well, yeah, and the Sean Payton thing, always there's that dangling thing happening there. And then we got 12 teams in the tournament at this point, and, who's to say what's safe and who's going to go where and what's going to happen at the end of all this. I do know this. It's really a diminished version of playoff football, right? I mean, all these quarterbacks out. This is the worst lot of playoff teams we've had in a long time because many of them are playing. First off, they were mediocre to begin with, and then they're playing without quarterbacks.
Well, that's the thing, I often, when I look at playoff teams and I kind of try to handicap who's going to go far, you look at the quarterbacks, right? Because the playoffs usually are about great quarterback performances. And, there aren't a lot of accomplished quarterbacks with experience who are healthy still in these playoffs. So, if one of those players does end up carrying his team, I think it's pretty easy to see which teams are going to be successful in the playoffs. But, yeah, you talk about some of the injuries. I mean, Raiders-Texans is the first game for the playoffs this weekend, and that certainly has lost a lot of luster without Derek Carr, and who knows what's going to happen with the Texans quarterback. But, then you've got the Dolphins situation, and it's not the same as if we had the marquee players in there.
Well, we've had this happen. I mean, this isn't the first time Houston's going to play postseason with a backup quarterback. Cincinnati certainly had A.J. McCarron last year. This goes on, and I guess it's really unfortunate in the case of the Raiders because, they were poised, I think, to make some noise. I think they could have gone to New England and played a football game up there.
Well, certainly they're a good young team with a lot going for them. Whether or not they are mature enough at this point in their program, this being really their first big statement year that they've had, I'm not sure about that, but certainly with it looks like Connor Cook in there now instead of Derek Carr, that's going to be a difficult thing to overcome. Maybe they could survive a game, but it's going to be tough for them in that second round. With whoever they get, if they do advance past the Texans.
He is Dan Pompei. He's at Bleacher Report as well as at danpompei.net. We've been talking football together for a couple of decades here, and really since the beginning of the Ravens. I mean, you came into my life in, I guess, 98 or around that part when the Ravens still stunk. They've now built this tradition that is, outside of New England, maybe Pittsburgh, maybe what the Giants have done. Very, very hard to replicate. Now, third out of 4 years now not making the playoffs. John Harbaugh had a press conference on Tuesday morning and says he's keeping his coordinators, much to the chagrin of the armchair quarterbacks around these here parts. But, veteran guys like Morningwig and obviously Dean Pease, this was not the greatest look for the Ravens and certainly wasn't a great look in Cincinnati over the weekend. But, they came an arm's length away on Christmas Day from their rival from at least being in the conversation to be one of those teams hosting a playoff game this weekend.
Yeah, I got awfully close. Really, I thought they were a pretty good team. I was surprised they didn't make the playoffs because I think, they have what it takes, certainly. And obviously, it was that, as you mentioned, that one arm, the Antonio Brown, fantastic play by just an unbelievable player that kept them out of it. But, I would think that the Ravens are a team that if they make a couple of the right tweaks, they could really come back strong and be a really strong contender next year. They had a few bumps early in the season that ultimately end up costing them this year, I think. And, they're obviously going to miss Steve Smith, who's retiring, and they need to keep looking at that position and find ways to make their offense more dynamic. But, I think that's a team that has some things going for it, and I'll be really surprised if they're not in the mix next year.
I know you have a great affinity for Steve Smith. You also have a great affinity for Eric Weddle. You profiled both of those guys during the offseason last year. Some thoughts about watching this whole thing from afar and Steve Smith ending his career having not won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, obviously that's unfortunate. He never got that chance, but, what a fantastic career he has. I think the temptation is to define receivers especially by numbers because they do have statistics that a lot of other players at different positions don't have. But I don't think Steve Smith can be defined by statistics. He really is unique in that regard among wide receivers. I think you have to define him by his heart and his competitive spirit and the way that he met challenges repeatedly throughout his career. And I think he's a guy that whether or not you were a fan of his team, you couldn't help but appreciate him and enjoy watching him play. And I think there's a lot of people around the National Football League who are going to miss watching him play and seeing him every Sunday. And I know the people who won't miss watching him or seeing him are the people who had to line up and try to stop him because he was a SOB right until the very end. What a joy it was to observe him for all these years.
I thought it was perfect when he went running after Williams on Sunday, ready to fist fight. I'm like, perfect. Go on. That's what you want from Steve Smith in the second quarter of his final game, right?
Absolutely. And you'd love to see more players like him with his attitude and his ability to just kind of neutralize whatever things that were in his life that made it difficult for him to succeed and get over the hump. And his like I said, his spirit just really separated him from so many other people, and it's what made him special, I think.
He is Dan Pompei at Bleacher Report. You can also follow him out on Twitter at Dan Pompei. Tens of thousands do, and he's in Chicago and trapped there, sort of in no man's land there for the Bears at this point. Many of these organizations, when they're not getting traction, Cleveland was throwing guys out every year. San Diego threw somebody out this week. Obviously, Buffalo didn't wait long. San Francisco didn't wait long. Chicago feels like there's some patience with 3-13 there for some reason, right?
Well, they've made a lot of changes prior to this regime. Since George McCaskey came in 2011, I think he's had 4 different general manager head coach combinations. So I think when he hired Ryan Pace and John Fox, I think he kind of made the commitment to say, I'm going to let this thing ride out and see what happens. And there were some encouraging signs for the Bears this year. It's hard to say that with a 3-13 season, obviously, but they did draft and develop some young players, I think, who are going to be part of the foundation for the long term, especially Jordan Howard, who is second in the league to Ezekiel Elliott in rushing, even though they rarely called his number and I think underused him terribly. But I think there's some hope. The Bears had 19 players on injured reserve this year, including 9 guys who I think could have been starters and would have been big contributors to this team. So it's difficult to judge them this year based on the record. They weren't supposed to be a great team anyway, and they ended up being an awful team. So I think John Fox and his crew certainly deserve another year, and we'll see what they can do next season.
In handicapping all of these empty spots now, and this will go on for the next couple of weeks until we get, seats filled, there's the Denver job, then there's everything else, right? The rest of these jobs all really come with some grim circumstances, whether it's the owners around them, the players on the field, draft circumstances. It is a mixed lot, these empty jobs, and, each one has some promise of, hey, there's only 32 of them, but most of these are stinkeroos, right?
Well, yeah, it all depends how you look at it. I think there are some candidates who might look at a team like the 49ers and say, if the owner is going to be okay, I like the fact that it's a blank slate and I could start over and I can bring in my own quarterback and I can, maybe influence the draft picks and be there for a long time and build and grow. But certainly, with the way the NFL is a what have you done for me lately league, you want to get to a situation, if you are a head coaching candidate, where you could win in a fairly short period of time, because we all know no one gets a long period of time to keep trying to prove yourself. So the Broncos do have at least the great defense, and you wonder a little bit about the quarterback situation and whether or not they can get back to even the level of play from the position that they had last year when they won the Super Bowl, which wasn't great, but it was good enough, obviously, for them to win with that great defense. The Jaguars opening is interesting because you've got an owner there who's shown great patience with Gus Bradley, and you wonder if there's a coach out there that might say, hey, maybe that's a place I could go in. If he likes Blake Bortles as a quarterback, I can develop him further, take him to the next step, and maybe that would be a place that would appeal to some head coaching candidates.
Dan Pompei joining us here from Bleacher Report, as well as at danpompei.net. You can also follow him out on Twitter as well. And, as much as we're going around the league here, you and I are going to see each other in Houston in a couple of weeks for Super Bowl 51. We're always there together. I don't know anything right now that I would, if you gave me $1, that I could bet in good conscience against the Patriots or the Cowboys right now. I know we can make some cases for some of these other teams, and Atlanta being the sleeper, and Green Bay and Pittsburgh playing well right now, and Kansas City. If you can fall in love with Alex Smith and there's sort of that solid game and believe they're going to be okay, I just feel like it's Cowboys and Patriots, and I'll be shocked if those two teams aren't there 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, they've been the best teams all season long, right? And, the Patriots obviously just know how to win. They know how to get there. They know how to get through the playoffs. They've got the great assassin at quarterback in Tom Brady, who is Mr. Clutch. And, they obviously, I think, have an advantage over everyone in the AFC. And then you look at the NFC, Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, they could surprise some people. But the thing about the Cowboys is you really like their formula and the way that they have not beaten themselves all season long. They have just kind of imposed their will on other teams with that great running game, put almost every game, in their control early, and not put themselves in bad situations where they've had to play high-risk football in the fourth quarter to try to come back and do something crazy. And Dak Prescott has been just an amazing field general for a rookie, a guy who has just avoided mistakes and kind of done all the right things just to win games, and sometimes we get caught up in the numbers and the statistics and all those kinds of things, and ultimately it's that bottom line that matters, and that's something that Tom Brady obviously figured out many, many years ago, and I think Dak Prescott has got it figured out too.
What an off-season we have here. Coaching jobs out there, football still to be played over the next month, and then, of course, the draft comes, and this is the time of the year where everybody starts talking about the draft again, right? Senior Bowl right around the corner. Yeah,
I'll be here before you know it, and it's going to be interesting. Looks like a good year for defensive players up top, and the quarterback situation remains kind of very unsettled. Doesn't look like there's that can't-miss guy at the quarterback position. But I think teams are starting to dig in heavy now, and obviously got free agency before the draft, but there's some teams out there that I think are really focusing on that draft already.
And the Bengals already had Pac-Man Jones arrested before the season's even, off-season's gone. It doesn't take long, does it?
Well, I think the league has to really hope that players are smarter than that and put themselves in better positions moving forward, because with the way the perception has gone the last few years and how the stakes have been raised with players getting in trouble with the law, I think you really can't afford a lot of those mistakes, and I think it's really going to end up costing players who do make those mistakes a lot of opportunities and maybe even get them out of the league a lot faster than they would have in the past.
Well, Dan, great catching up with you, man. Happy holidays to you. I know you'll be off watching football all weekend, and we'll be following you out on Twitter. Hope to see you down in Houston. We can visit there and talk about, I don't know, Patriots, Cowboys. I mean, it's like, ISIS versus Al-Qaeda from a football perspective. Who can root for these teams except that, the people that love them? Everyone loves to hate these franchises.
Well, I'll tell you who else could root for those teams, the NFL, because those are the two big markets, two big teams popular all over the country, and that would be a matchup that the NFL would love to see.
Yeah, those Cowboy fans are licking their chops to drive down to Houston. I've heard enough of it already. Hey, Dan, great having you on, man. Happy visit. Happy New Year to you. We'll check in with you again soon.
Thanks, Nestor.
You got it. Dan Pompei from Bleacher Report and DanPompei.net, longtime NFL writer, my longtime pal out of the windy city of Chicago, Illinois, where they're not playing playoff football either. You can find me in the Buy Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We're there for you in that morning newspaper as well. Every morning it hits your email inbox. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month here in 2017 to get in the best shape of your life. There's one right around the corner from you. Any breaking news out of the castle? And we were waiting on some news on Tuesday morning in the Harbaugh press conference. Did not get it. But if there's any other breaking news there about coaches or the quarterback coaching job or even the Orioles doing something, you'll get it first in the WNST Tech Service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Of course, Dennis Colatzos is here every Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. Nasty at WNST.net is the way to reach me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere you find your digital communications and your social, we're going to be there for you, including streaming live on Facebook as well as YouTube in mostly high-definition quality. Sometimes. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.